This is Colin O'Keefe checking in once again for LXBN TV. Internet e-commerce giant Alibaba just recently saw its IPO hit a staggering $25 billion, the world's largest ever stock market flotation. Joining me now to discuss it and what American companies should know in the wake of this IPO is attorney Bob White of Gunster and author on the firm's blog, The Securities Edge. Bob, I know that you wrote on some of these things in your post on the subject, but what are some of the problems, issues, or concerns that you see in the wake of this IPO?
Sure, Colin, thank you. And there certainly was a record-breaking IPO and very interesting to watch it go like it did. But there's three areas of concern from the legal side that I think people need to at least keep their eye on. The first is accounting. As it's been well documented, the SEC has been taken a very aggressive position against the Chinese affiliates of the. There's been a lot of questions raised about the validity of the accounting over there and the information that investors are really getting. And Alibaba's auditor is PwC, and no aspersions on them, but their Chinese affiliate is doing the accounting for Alibaba. So these issues arise. And the question is, what happens if the SEC then goes after Alibaba in some way? What will happen here? So accounting is certainly a big issue. The second is corporate governance. We're used to this in the United States for the most part in having a really standard corporate governance system where the shareholders elect the board. The board has a fiduciary duty to do certain things. If the board doesn't act correctly, we have rights and remedies against the board to correct and protect our positions. In this case, though, the founders, a small group of the founders of Alibaba, I believe about 25 people, including Jack Ma, the overall right to appoint a majority of the board of directors themselves. So that's a real kind of a different corporate governance structure than we're used to. It's certainly one that takes away some of the shareholder rights and remedies that we may have in this country. Now, again, a lot of this is not unusual. I mean, I think Baidu.com and other Chinese companies who are listed over here have similar structures, but it is certainly something to look at. The way I've heard it analogized is it's similar to flying over the Pacific. You're going to put all your trust in the pilot because you aren't going to have a lot of say or anything to do if anything goes wrong. So you've really got to have faith in management and in the founders of this company to make sure that you're comfortable with your position. The third issue that we've really looked at here, really thought a lot about, is just the corporate structure of Alibaba. When you buy Alibaba, and if you bought in the IPO or if you buy now, you're not buying shares of Alibaba or the Chinese company. You're actually buying shares of a Cayman subsidiary or affiliate of Alibaba. And that's because of the Chinese laws restricting foreign ownership of strategic assets, of which this is deemed to be one by the Chinese government. So you're buying this this Cayman's company, which actually has contracts in place with Alibaba to share assets and give you rights that way. But it's not like buying a share of IBM where you own a share of IBM. This way you're buying really an affiliated company that has contractual relationships with the company you want to invest in. And that structure, again, is not unusual. I think Baidu has that exact, like it's something new that's just come up, but it's something certainly to take a look at and to think about as you go down the road here with Alibaba.
Definitely. There are certainly some issues to be aware of despite this very successful IPO. And then second, you also wrote on this, what are some of the things that American companies should know in the wake of this IPO? What are the lessons or takeaways for them?
Well, I think with American companies, I think you need to look at the way we do things here is a little more clear, a little more structured, and I think it makes you a lot more comfortable as an investor with the structure of the IPO. And again, not to cast any aspersions on anybody in this, I'm sure it's a fine company, but some of the other issues that have come up here from a business standpoint are Alibaba's done great in China, just absolutely great, but some observers really feel that this is due to the protectionist legislation that the Chinese government has provided. Amazon and eBay and some of our top e-commerce companies have not been able to go into China to a large degree, some, but not to a very large degree, because of the restrictive legislation and the protectionist policies of the Chinese government. And a lot of people feel that shielded Alibaba from some real competition. So we're going to see what happens now. It's going to be very, very interesting from a business perspective what happens over the next year or two. Alibaba obviously has this huge war chest and a lot of money to play with, a lot of brain power, a lot of real success. But now they're going to face real unfettered competition over here. And I'm really interested to see how that happens with the companies, the Amazons and the eBays that we've grown up with in this country. Also, it's rumored around the net now that Alibaba may be buying or somehow acquiring PayPal, which was recently divested. And so that's another area of consideration of competition here if they do buy PayPal and use it in this country. I just think it's going to be very interesting times to keep your eye on Alibaba for the three potential problems I mentioned, and also for this business competition area to see what really happens. It's time for Alibaba to step up and really prove it can, compete in the global marketplace. I have a feeling they'll do a very darn good job of that as well, but it's going to be interesting to see how good it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to watch as they certainly have a lot of money to work with nowadays, but there are still, as you mentioned, some issues that everyone needs to be aware of. Once again, that was Bob White of Gunster. For more of his insight, be sure to check out their blog. It's The Securities Edge, and you can find it at thesecuritiesedge.com. Thank you for joining me today, Bob.
Thanks, Colin.